So looking at today, we're going to cover again going to give you some examples of how to do this, going to chat through some different stuff. Very little of this is going to be brand new. It's going to reflect on what we've already done in the previous 3 sessions. So I'm certainly at no point in any of my presentations asking you to reinvent the wheel. I'm just really asking you to do what you're doing better. And that's basically what it comes down to. So certainly moving towards this idea of employer of choice shouldn't be a terrifying notion. It's just incremental achievements on what you're already doing. So we look at the employees, we'll do a quick recap, we look at the employees' perspective, and that's really, really important when we start looking at investing in your staff. Because if you take the time to understand them, if you take the time to understand and acknowledge what they can contribute to your business, then you're beginning to really think like that coveted status of employer of choice and investing in your staff. And we look at why invest and the different ways you can invest, which, believe me, are not expensive. Sometimes they might require a little bit of imagination, but they do not have to be expensive. So just from a quick recap, we started off and we looked at management development. We talked about your changing role within the business, potentially changing people who are in your business, changing their role, what that looks like, what you have to give away when you change role. We also looked at the idea that as you're moving towards business management, so unit management, business ownership, it becomes less about the cows in the system and more about people. We looked at the kind of things that you can develop for personal capacity. Again, we will be looking at you as the key stakeholder in your business in one of our later sessions, and then different types of interpersonal skills. So that was our first session together. The next session, we looked at delivering on your promise. And again, when we're looking at investing, like today's session about investing in your staff, a lot of it is going to happen at that point. It's going to happen at the employment basics, getting things right before they ever come through the door. So it's really about an ongoing journey. You're putting time in at the beginning, you're investing in them when you're in your business, and then you're investing to continue to have them in your business, or at least to make a positive impact if they need to leave your business. So it's really adding to all of these thoughts that we've had already. Last week, and this is actually a really good point about investments, is this idea of accountability, so it's holding people accountable. Today we might, I'm sure some of you are thinking, look, should I be bonusing? And actually what we would find in business is that people tend to bonus where there's underperformance, and that's about not holding people accountable. So you shouldn't default to bonusing to get people to work harder, to work better. You should go straight to accountability. So holding people accountable for the job that they're being asked to do. And that's a really important one. I see it a lot in people saying, oh, we bonus for empty rate, we bonus for milk quality. They're basics of a dairy role. You should not be bonusing for those. You should be holding people accountable to meet those standards. So that will come through as well as we look at investment. So as we you'll recognize this, I've talked about it before, and many of these points are coming through all of the talk, so it should be about building a bigger picture rather than feeling, God, this is even more I have to learn about. We come straight back to this concept of why. So why, how, what? So the why is that core driver that somebody has. How are they going to achieve that? Well, hopefully through being employed on your business. And what are they going to do? Well, that's down to you. So why would anybody want to be employed? And this is across any sector, it's not just dairy. It's to maintain a standard of living. So they're getting, they need to pay their mortgage, they need to fund the family, etc. They've got bills to pay. Could be to fund a passion. Could be to create opportunities for funding a passion. They love sport, they want to do that. They love traveling, they want to be able to fund that. To create opportunities, so give themselves, I'll get on the ladder. So I really want to get involved in dairy, so I'm going to start off by being employed first, learning as much as I can. And we see that with new entrants, particularly in Ireland. You see some really interested individuals who are starting off with the ambition to do something really quite impressive in the dairy industry. And they're creating opportunity for themselves by firstly getting employed on a dairy farm. And they're very strategically picking who they work for because they want to learn as much as they can. So they're creating opportunity for themselves. To acquire a skill set, that's the same thing. They want to know about dairy. It might be that they've already been in dairy for a long time, but they want to change system. They've heard something about a different way of doing it, and they're quite intrigued by that, so they want to acquire a new skill set. It could be just for fulfillment. Now that, again, that's really kind of holy grail stuff. I mean, that's a long way down the line in looking for fulfillment. When we look at motivation theory, we would call that self-actualization. And that's really that's the kind of the zenith of the pyramid. You cannot get a sense of achievement if you're not satisfying your basic needs. And your basic needs are going to be simple things like eating, drinking, shelter, safety. Then you're going to have things like security needs, where you're part of something, a stable system, like a good community, good workplace. So really that fulfillment one is where the employer of choice is inspiring to, but it's long-term vision. It's not a straight away concept. And then it could be just that somebody comes to you to fill time. So if we look at somewhere like Australia, yourselves, you've got people backpacking, you've got tourists maybe coming through your business. They're just filling time for an amount of a couple of months to get some pay to go on to the next thing that they want to do while traveling in your country. So we can see it could also be that for company, they're just joining the business. I'm going to look at this idea a bit further in the next slide, because this idea of company is really, really valuable. We see a lot of writing and a lot of research about disenfranchised youth, people who don't feel part of society, they feel excluded, they feel that they haven't a sense of belonging, that people have become impersonal, social media has removed the interpersonal skill set, all of these kind of things that take away, I suppose, from a fabric of society. And actually that's something that farmers should be really, really offering. So when we look at how would you attract somebody to your business, which we look at today, one of the things you really need to be hammering home is a sense of community, because there's a great sense of community in agriculture. I work across all sectors. No other sector invites me into their home. No other sector says, when you're passing, why don't you stay with us? And it's not for gain. They're not there to pick my brains. They're actually saying, you're in our country, you're traveling through, please come and stay, spend some time with us, So you don't see that anywhere else. I do not come across that in other sectors. They might offer you a gift on behalf of the company, but they certainly don't ask you to come home to their house and share a cup of tea and see what they're doing. So we need to really work on that idea of company, because that's going to be a huge seller for a lot of people. And that could easily be their why that helps you to keep people attracted to your business. How are they going to do it? They're going to be employed, and then they're going to hopefully, so you need to believe that every single employee that comes to your business is there to do well. They don't enter your business to fail. They really don't. And you need to believe that, and you need to give them sufficient incentive to perform well. You need to give them sufficient workplace structure to allow them to do their job properly, and not assume that they're there to abuse you or to take from you, that they're actually there for a win-win relationship. So the minimum they're going to do is show up on time and be present. So that idea of being present is, and it's hugely costly for businesses. We see that very much. I do a lot of work in the UK. You would see one of the biggest costs to the UK to the workplace is a lack of what's called presenteeism. So absenteeism, people aren't there, that's costly to a business. Presenteeism is actually more costly, because that means that you're, if you're not present, you're there, but you're not present. You're not fully engaged in your work. You're just going through the motions. And we want to be able to remove that for people. We want to give some sort of meaning so that they get involved and engaged. And you can do a lot of that creation of meaning through getting the basics right. Focused application, so getting on with it, and contribution. So we know from motivation theory, and I mentioned motivation theory already, that people are motivated. The two main motivators in the workplace are recognition and achievement. Now, achievement is going to be contribution. If I can contribute to your business and your business benefits from that, I have a strong sense of achievement. I feel I belong, I feel worthy to be here, I feel I've contributed to something greater than I am. And then if I'm acknowledged for that, and we're going to talk about investment, and it doesn't have to be big, it could be a well-placed thank you. If my contribution is acknowledged, so if we get recognition, well, you've just hit two of the workplace motivators, achievement and recognition. So you need to believe that the people in your business will contribute if at all possible. And if it isn't possible, what is it about you and your workplace that could be preventing that? And that's the first port of call. So we come to that feedback loop. I've mentioned it in the last session about accountability. The first place you look at is at yourself. Why is this person not doing what they're supposed to do? So one of the things we need to be really, really conscious about is this point here. Why should anybody entrust their why to you? So I come across unfortunately, and in agriculture, people saying, they should be lucky for a job. They're lucky. I'm giving them the chance. I'm giving them the opportunity, rather than thinking I am blessed and fortunate to have somebody who wants to work in my business. So we need to take away this idea that we're giving everything in order to have the employee. And we need to really turn it around and say, we are honored and privileged that somebody would want to come and work for me. Employment is an opportunity cost. If I am working for you, what am I missing out on? So it is down to the employer to really, really give me an incentive, to really make it worth my while to stay with you. Now, we have an interesting situation during times, and it's going to happen we have to assume that there's going to be a global recession when the second quarter of the pandemic has been reported, and that's going to turn it actually into an employer's market. So in recession, it's going to be an employer's market. We need to, so we've got a little bit of a shift where we're probably going to have more opportunity to employ somebody. Once we start moving out of a recession, people start to look elsewhere because they're not obliged to stay where they are. But in that time, if you can create a good workplace for the people if you can satisfy your employees why, they're less likely to want to move from you. Because although humans are the most changeable of all animals, the most adaptive of all animals on the planet, as individuals, people don't particularly like change. So we should be moving towards an employer's market as we see recession hitting in. We should be seeing the opportunity to have staff that mightn't have come to you ordinarily. It's a great opportunity for you to do some things really, really well and think about, now that I've got some good people in my business, how do I hold on to them? What's the incentive for them to stay? How do I fulfill their why so that they'll stay with me? And if you're sitting there going, oh, please, I'm not interested, I can just say straight up that you're never moving towards that employer of choice, and you will struggle to have employees. Because if you're believing that the employees has the privilege of working for you, you probably see your employees a cost. And if you see your employees a cost, and we've talked about that before, then you've got an emotional gut reaction that you just don't enjoy having employees in your business. And that means you're always going to be on the back foot. So really think about that. Why is a core central value. It is really, really, it's an intrinsic motivation to the individual. And so you need to earn the right for that person to invest their why with you. And that's a little bit of what we're going to look at here. So again, this concept of why permeates through everything. Why are you in agriculture? Why are you an employer? Why are you doing this? Why are you a unit manager? Why would you work where you're working? You can really delve into that a bit further looking at Simon Sinek. So he talks about start with why. Some people call it their objective. Some people call it their higher goal. Really get your head around the people in your business, why they're with you. Start and have those conversations now. So if you've got incumbent employees, why are you here? Why did you stay with me? You could have worked in any business in this area. Why did you stay with me? Ask what it is. And it's rarely big. We think it's money. If your staff come to you and complain about money, it's rarely about money. Money is a cold fact that is easy to discuss. Emotions are much more difficult to discuss. But when you drill into somebody complaining about it, there isn't enough money, that usually isn't the reason at all. It's just that's an easier, more objective thing to discuss. So we're going to look at how you can invest and why you should invest. So the next slide I'm looking at, this slide here, this is a really, really powerful slide. Okay, this is a really powerful model. You see in business that time is money. So the majority of models in business are 4 quadrants, so on 2 axes, 4 quadrants, and it's used to make sense of a lot of information. So let's just quickly have a look at this. This is stakeholder mapping. It was developed by Men's Law in '91, and it really looks about what are called LULUs or NIMBYs, so locally unwanted land uses and not in my backyard projects, okay? So when you're as a government or as a council trying to bring in something unpopular, you need to work out where the power and interest lies. This is where this originally came from. So it's a model from the world of construction, from planning, and it's about investing your energy in the right person. But actually, it's a really powerful model. I use it for stress management. I use it for thinking about relationships in the workplace. But what I really want you to do here is to think about the employees in your business. So I'm just going to go through what each one means. Right here in this top right box, this is high power, high interest. They are key players. They are people who have the power to impact your decision making and to make your life better, to make your workplace better, and they're interested too as well. Now, what we need to make sure is that the key players in your business, you're a key player in your business, by the way, we need to make sure that the key players have high power and high interest on your side of the fence. We run into a lot of problems if you have people who have high power, high interest, but on their interest is on the other side of the fence to you, so that they're actually against you and they're wielding their power and their interest against you. What does that look like in the workplace? That looks like a disgruntled employee who is sabotaging the workplace, who is undermining your performance, who is maybe taking to social media and writing you off as an employer. They have the power to do that and they are sufficiently interested to do it. Now, why would any employee be sufficiently interested to wield their power against you? Bad experience, being treated incorrectly, you know, feeling that they're being abused in the workplace rather than invested in, rather than being loved, if you like. So we need to think about our staff as having a huge amount of power to affect our business. Okay, so that's somebody within your business. Over here, in a tight market, which we're probably moving away from at the moment, but in a tight market, all employees have high power. So you need somebody to work for you. You want an employee. You want to bring somebody in as a key employer, but they've got low interest. Okay, so you have to leverage their power in order to come and work for you. So we touched on this before, but we didn't really go into it in a big way. What are the kind of things that you can do? What is it about your business? Okay, now given you're going to have a number of things that you probably see as downfalls in your business, maybe your location, maybe you think you're too rural, maybe you think there isn't enough going on around you. If they are facts about your business that you cannot do anything about, that you cannot control, they're uncontrollable, then you've got to be imaginative and turn around and say, well, what is it about my business that could generate interest? So here's somebody who could potentially work for me. They've got high power. They're not interested in me. They could work for anybody. They could work in the local town. They could travel to the city. How do I leverage their interest to move them across over here? Okay, so we need to move them across into this, and we need to do it for the right reasons. So I constantly refer to this idea: every single person who moves through your business is a brand ambassador for your business. So let's say the vet. The vet has a number of clients that they can go to. Why would they come to you? And what power have they? They possibly don't need you as a client. They might have so many people on their books that if they lost one client, it wouldn't be the end of the world. So they've got high power, but potentially low interest. So you've got to leverage their interest, for example, as a person who comes into your business, and you're making sure you pay them on time, that you're calling them out for genuine reasons, that you're pleasant when they're there and not blaming them for all the problems of the world, etc. So that's what I mean about understanding where somebody's power and interest lies. So think of employees as having a lot of power to influence your business, but potentially low interest to go into your business. And this is where you start really building your employment package. You want to make somebody sufficiently interested to at least consider working for you. What happens in a lot of workplaces is because particularly if the market is tight, what happens is they say, well, I have this person working for me, they're threatening to leave, I'm really desperately worried about that, so I'm going to start changing my goals, changing my parameters as an employer, and I'm going to change it in order to satisfy that one employee. What you do there is you very dramatically move yourself away from being a key player and you become a bystander, which is somebody down here. You have low power because you're giving away power to the employee, but you're highly interested in what happens. So you need to maintain your own power and interest here. Now, how do we do that? Well, first of all, we have timely employment, so we're not just taking anybody we can get. You would really see that in the scenario where somebody employs at their employment is untimely, I suppose is the word. They're taking it's last minute employment, they're taking whoever they can get. They're absolutely grateful for that person. And as a result, they're on the back foot because it's not the right person. It's not the best person for the job. It's not the right person for the job. And so they start to change their business. They change their parameters because they're already on the back foot. And that means, and this is also about accountability. So if you're not holding people accountable in your business, you have made yourself a bystander, not a key player, a bystander. If you do not hold people accountable in your business, you are a bystander. You're giving them a whole packet of power, and as interested as you are in your business, you're allowing them to dictate the rules of engagement. Low power, low interest, for example, is minimal effort. They shouldn't be interfering with you. Actually, we would see this a lot in agriculture, where this cohort has actually quite a lot of interest has quite a lot of I suppose, influence over people. So this is where we start worrying about what our neighbours will say, what communities say, and we're not holding true to our own values because we're worried about what other people will think, for example, and we start listening to gossip. Around all of this, in this model, I think the easiest thing to ask yourself is if somebody is distracting you or you're worried about somebody, is to ask yourself really, does that person contribute greatly to your business? And when you can't pay you can't pay back your debt, and are they going to hold your hand in the middle of the night? And you have to ask yourself, who are you investing your time and energy in? But I would strongly suggest that the majority of employers are not understanding the power and interest of the employees that they have. So really step back and see where your relationship is. Make sure that when you have employees, because of the scale of your business, these employees are high power and high interest. If you were working in a multinational with thousands of employees, A single employee has high interest because you're paying for their job, but they've got low power because they're only one person. This is where the trade unions were developed from, to give the small man a voice. By power of numbers, people were able to create power for themselves. So by numbers, they created power for themselves. Just on an aside, because I'm often asked about it, if you look at something like detractors from the industry, so people who are attacking the industry and saying that the industry is negative, one person saying it is frustrating, but it can be silenced. You know, you can ignore them. Whereas if you start getting social media en masse, you can start getting a lot of disparate people, so people who are in various locations joining together as a group, and then we see the anti-dairy lobbies. So it's really important that you are thinking about, and this again is coming back to the idea that as you move away from working in the business, you're working on the business. Crucial part of working on the business is understanding where people lie within your power interest grid. So who is worth investing in? And are you busy spending too much time listening to gossipers and naysayers and worried about what they'll say, and not enough time investing in your staff, not enough time investing in the people around you who can genuinely contribute to your business? So the idea of this model here is sitting down and working out who is worth my investment, who is worth my time and energy. And this one here is a really good one. If employees have high power to impact my business, but they're not particularly interested in my business, what offering am I making? You know, what is it I'm going to do? If you are, so for example, if you are trying to attract a unit manager into dairy and you expect them to have previous experience, well, telling them about they'll be managing cows and their work schedule, they know what they do. They've been working in the dairy industry. So what is it about your business that gives them something more? So you've got to be imaginative in that offering. How can you generate employees' interest to come and work for you? So what is it that you can do for your employee that makes you sufficiently interesting for them to consider investing their why in your business? And this is really, really about offering a good package to that individual and understanding where they're coming from. So it could be, as I mentioned earlier, you know, feeling a lack of community. Come and work on our farm. We're a tight-knit bunch. We work together. There's a great sense of family. That is very, very attractive to people. One of the things I would find in manual labor industry, so construction or agriculture, is we see a lot of people who have been disenfranchised by the academic system. So they had different learning set. That meant that they were kind of sidelined by the academic institutes, and as a result have often felt undermined or undervalued, and they move into somewhere, so they tend to be pushed out to the manual labor industries. That's an opportunity for you to really, really invest in somebody who previously people didn't have faith in. And I hear fantastic stories in agriculture about people saying, I went to work for somebody, they saw in me what I knew I had, but nobody else had acknowledged. They gave me the opportunity to run their unit. They gave me the opportunity to be a decision maker within their business. I would do anything for that person. I'd swim the Pacific Ocean just to help that person if they needed it. You know, so it's really about understanding what you can do that will invest and interest the person who has, you know, how can you get them to just give you a moment's attention? And then what are you going to do once you get them in the gate? What else can you offer? So that brings us on to the next stage. So I really, for all of the information that we have, the use of models is really, really valuable. And everybody here, you should be sitting down and saying, well, who fills into these, you know, and when somebody's distracting you and bothering you, look, a perfect example, low power, high interest is the sales rep. Comes into your yard, wants to sell you something. They're highly interested in you buying from them, but they don't have power potentially to invest in your business, unless to influence your business. You give them power by spending 2 hours chatting to them. So you need to think about where, you know, if I would look at this significantly as a time management model as well, where are you investing your energy? In the meantime, you've got disgruntled employees who don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They're wandering around with their hands empty, wandering around with their hands empty, and wondering what they should be doing. And there you're having a full conversation with somebody who can't actually impact your business. That person's delighted because they're keeping you invested in their product. This person is very frustrated because you're not paying them sufficient attention or managing them their time appropriately. So just step back and reflect and say, Where am I investing my resources? Where am I investing my time and energy? Who am I listening to that I shouldn't be listening to, for example? Who should I listen to more? And another one that we see here, and it's a really typical one, you know, we often ignore the person with high power but low interest. So we'll just, somebody who's in your face all the time. So somebody who's the complainer, the whinger, saps your energy, an energy vampire, we'd call them. They are creating power for themselves by sapping your energy. They're in your face getting information from you. They're making sure that you do everything they want. They're complaining, they're whinging. And in the meantime, your really solid worker who has high power and also high interest is being shoved to the side. And very, very shortly, that person gets fed up that they're not getting the attention they deserve, even if they're not the person who's in your face saying it, but they will feel that, hold on a minute, I'm killing myself as a key player for you. You're not investing your time in me. You're too busy looking after the person who shouldn't be getting as much investment as they are. And now I've got high power, but I'm beginning to lose interest in you as an employer, in you as a business. So be very mindful where you are investing your own personal time and energy when you are dealing with anybody who comes through your business and how that's reflected. And again, on the brand ambassador for your business, you know, making sure that anybody who comes through your yard, that you are polite, that you're representing the business well, so that when they go elsewhere, they're at least, if they're not talking about you, they may not be talking about your business, but they're at least not complaining about your business. So just being mindful of that power interest idea. So what are the kind of things we can invest in? Well, very simply, and a lot of these you will hopefully have done already because we've already discussed them in our previous three discussions. You're going to start looking at things like physical. So we've got things like health and safety. Every day you are slack on health and safety, you are communicating to your members of staff that you do not care for them, that you're quite happy for them to put themselves at risk. And you might consider yourself a really decent guy. The local community might think you're perfectly charming. But if I come onto your business and I think that you are putting me physically at risk, you are communicating something completely different and you're undermining all the charm that you have elsewhere. So an example I think of in my head was I was doing some similar courses actually in Ireland, and there was a highly capable unit manager. She'd been through the diploma in Moore Park, so she was quite sought after individual. And she was going to apply for a job as a unit manager, and she walked into well-known, it was close to her parents. Her parents were like, this guy's fantastic, you know, really good reputation. We'd love if you got that job, definitely go for the interview and consider it. And she said she drove onto the farm and she drove back out again because she perceived the farm as unsafe. So she didn't even go for the interview. And you know, came back to her parents and said, I won't work there, it's not safe. And they go, but this person's really good, got good standing in the community. And she said, I don't care what his standing is. I am not working somewhere that puts me physically at risk. So think about what you're communicating by being sloppy, by being dismissive about health and safety. You're basically saying also that I don't respect my business enough. I'm allowing my business to be exposed to risk. What risk? Litigation. So I am not professional enough to make sure that my business is risk-free. And that's a big statement. So you're not just telling the person that they're unsafe, you're also saying that you are not professional. Employment basics, this is physical again, getting those contracts right, putting time and effort into it, putting time and effort into the physical package you put together for your staff, how you're attracting staff. Go back to that high power, low interest quadrant on the previous slide. How are you attracting people into your business? So that's the employment basics. What are you offering that is more attractive than the next business? Have you got your rosters in place? Have you got your standard operating procedures in place? Are you making it as easy as possible for people to come and slot into your business, not be bolted onto your business? Facilities, again, we really do not have to reinvent. You don't have to go out and spend, you know, have Italian marble in your office. It's really about just making sure that somebody can enjoy their break, their lunch, and that they feel that they're, you know, if they need to take a shower, they can have a shower. Again, kind of a startling one, and actually it was the same girl on the course who asked it. She just asked in a group of 20, how many people have a staff-specific toilet? Now, again, we're talking in Ireland, the scale isn't the same as in Australia, but only 2 people in a room of 20 had it. It meant that if you worked on the farm, you had to go into the homeowner's house to use the bathroom. And that's not good. That's not right. That's not right for the farmer because it blurs boundaries. And it's uncomfortable for the person who has to go into your kingdom and use your facilities. So it's really thinking about what facilities are you providing and just making it comfortable and clean and holding people accountable as well, not just saying, well, that's the staff's area, so I won't go into it. Go into the staff area and check it and make sure that it's up to a clean standard, that they're looking after your property so that they feel safe and comfortable and clean, etc. And then this work practices is massive, not working through drudgery, but looking for smart, simple solutions, not going for this, the harder we work, the better farmers we are, the more the physical labor, the better the day has been, but actually looking for smart solutions so that people don't feel, well, I won't last any length here. I'll be broken by the time I'm 30. And the story I always think of is a local farmer to me who built three cattle sheds by hand. So basically started off, plowed out an area, the size of the shed they wanted, plowed until they hit rock. When they hit rock, went in with the pickaxe, and then removed it with a front loader and built 3 sheds like that. So we were talking to the guy, an employee he had, and he spent 12 years working for him, and he said, I was 12 years a slave, because literally it was drudgery. I mean, it was just hard work. There was no smart solutions anywhere. And it was kind of the principle of, if you're not doing it the hardest possible way, it's not done correctly. We need to get that out of agriculture. That is just destructive to the agricultural, the work ethic. Work ethic is about applying yourself well. It's not about working long, inefficient hours. It's about being effective. So there's a difference between efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency is doing it right, but effectiveness is doing the right thing. So you could be doing it right, but it's not the right thing to be doing. So you need to consider how are people doing the work, and are you making it more difficult for people? And what I have tended to find, and I suppose it's a bit politically incorrect, but I feel I can say it because I'm female. If you had your business set up for a teenage girl to run, well, then you have looked for smart solutions that mean your business isn't being run through drudgery. And I was working with a high performing business here. And he was saying one of the things we notice when we bring girls into our setup is they're not very good at managing the water system. They're not strong enough to manage the pipes, etc., etc. Well, then the system is wrong if it can't be managed by somebody, because the unit manager was female. She should be okay. She'll have other staff around her to do it, but in the event that somebody is missing, would she be able to do the job? So it's really thinking about, if I removed myself. So if I made myself obsolete, could business continue in my absence? Have I made, could I send my wife out to do it? Could I send my daughter out to do it? Can I send somebody who's not as physically capable as I am out there, and will they still get through the day's work? And that's a really clever way to think about it. And it's about understanding that people, when they're young and have energy, they'll go for the physical work, but it doesn't take long for them to go, this is drudgery. What are we doing this for? This is frustrating. And business I worked with in England, they always talk about fun and easy. So, looking for solutions that are fun and easy, and having that mindset so that you're not always looking for the most difficult way to do it. So we have a lot of things that you are already working on, that you have already got in place, that if you just tighten them up, you are showing that you're investing and interested in your staff. So I'm not for a second saying go out and spend a huge amount of money. I'm saying do the basics really, really well. And that in itself is a great investment in your staff. Then we've got this idea of support. So this is more moving towards a personal concept of investment. And again, we talk about, you could invest a lot in the physical equipment, the surroundings of your business, but actually be not a supportive person, be a dismissive person. And you're selling 2 different stories there. You're being very, very physically aware of somebody, but not emotionally aware of somebody. And I was speaking to somebody, they do a lot of consultancy in a well-known mining company. And they said they're obsessed with health and safety from a physical perspective. So it's all about walking up the stairs carefully, lifting properly, all of these things, because they work in a physical industry. But he said they're extraordinarily abusive to each other psychologically. There's dreadful bullying, the snide comments, there's this, there's that. So they understand health and safety from a physical point of view, but they erode all of the value that they have invested in the physical health and safety by being so abusive from a psychological point of view. And I don't want to panic anybody here and think, oh my God, are you saying that I have to hold hands and cry with people when they're upset? I'm not saying that for a second. I'm just saying, and we're going to look at this, I think it's the next session actually, we're going to talk about respect, just understanding that you have bad days, your staff will have bad days, that you have personal problems, your staff will have personal problems, you know, that people go on peaks and troughs of energies. Just taking the time to understand that before that person is an employee, they are human. And that is something you absolutely have in common. So if there are things that panic you that you don't enjoy, it's quite possible the other person doesn't enjoy them as well. So just taking the time, you know, rather than shooting them because they're 10 minutes late, and you should hold them accountable. Don't get me wrong, you're holding them accountable, but actually sitting down and saying, I noticed that you're, you know, this week you've been 10 minutes late every morning. What's going on? That's not like you. You've never been late before. What's happened? And just that conversation where you acknowledge that somebody's behavior is different could change that person's behavior back to spot on behavior. People like to know that they contribute. People like, we talked about recognition being a major sense of motivation. One of the ways to recognize somebody is to recognize when they're in trouble and to offer support or solution. So just stepping back and saying, would I like somebody to shout at me and to humiliate me in front of people? No, I wouldn't. Would I like if somebody noticed that I wasn't having a good day and asked me how I was? Yes, I would. You know, it's asking those very simple questions. Again, certainly not a major money investment idea. Just taking the time to observe your staff, understand your staff, and see how they're getting on. And you know, and that's particularly important, that when we look at accountability, that you hold people accountability for their work, but you at least give them the opportunity to defend why they're behaving the way they are, rather than going straight in for a personal assassination. Communication then is a huge one. It's taking the time to communicate effectively. We have a really complicated issue in farming in that we have farmed with our families, so we have almost telepathic communication where a grunt signifies everything but means nothing to the outsider. So we need to spend time to communicate more effectively, communicating through time management concepts, understanding how to listen appropriately. There's a huge, I mean, communication is such a huge industry. You really should be taking the time to learn how to communicate. And yes, you may not be a good communicator, but it's still something you could learn. You weren't born talking, you learned to talk. You weren't born communicating with people. You screamed and shouted. Okay, we know that's not appropriate anymore. But you've got to evolve through it and understand that you can learn to communicate better. You will communicate a lot better if you have time and space in the system. You know, it's understanding your pressure points. So if you're not good in the morning and somebody's going to get from you as a grunt, maybe avoiding them in the morning so you don't grunt at them. Understanding how you communicate and thinking about how you can get more from somebody else. Resources, again, we don't have to be expensive. You know, simple things. If you look at something like lean management, they would talk about having the tools available for the job. So it could be as simple as having, you know, a spanner, the most used spanner, 10 mil, whatever it is, 12 mil, having that available in every place it's likely to come up. That's going to cost you a couple of dollars. It's not going to be a huge amount of money, but it means that I'm not going from one end of the farm to the other trying to find the resources that I need, you know, that they're available as close as possible to the place where they'll be used. That removes, this comes back to here, it removes drudgery from the system. It allows people to get on with the work. You know, what I mentioned at the last session on accountability, it's very common to punish people for not doing the job properly without thinking about the fact you didn't give them the resources to do the job properly. So think about what is required to do the jobs and is it available? I know that Bernie has spoken to me that you've done some lean management. Dairy Australia have done some lean management with New Zealand consultant Jana Hawkins. So it's thinking about how can you apply those smart solutions that are not excruciatingly expensive, but that remove waste in the system. So when we look at lean management is about removing waste in the system. When you remove waste in the system, you're not working through drudgery, you're working through smart solutions where you have resources available. And then coming down here, I've mentioned this several times already.
Just letting you know, 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Accountability, we've spoken about accountability a lot. So holding people accountable is showing support. If you do not hold people accountable, you are rewarding that person and punishing everybody else. So you've got really good, remember I mentioned earlier on the previous slide, you've got somebody who's a great worker in your business and they're doing everything they're supposed to do, and you have another worker who is whinging, complaining, taking all your energy, distracting you from investing in the right people. You're not holding them accountable. Really, really key on concept here from psychology. Behavior exists because it's allowed to. If you allow somebody to do the job badly, the job will be done badly. So holding people accountable is actually one of the best ways you can invest in your staff, because it shows that you believe in them, you trust them, you respect them, and that you're not allowing them to carry inefficiency. You're not allowing them to carry a weaker member of staff. You're holding everybody accountable. And then as we move our investment forward, and we've got all our basics in place, and we're thinking about the people we work with, we can then start to invest some more significant money or finance into them. And that's looking at training. And this idea of development, you know, nobody was born a farmer. You became a farmer. You learned to become a farmer. So if you bring somebody into your business who doesn't know what they're doing, you need to provide training. That's a huge investment. You need to provide the opportunity for the person to do their job properly. So you also need to give them time and space to learn. So I always come across this idea, you know, you're farming since you were 2, you know it inherently, it's blatantly obvious to you, but you have to allow other people the opportunity to learn. And they may not have the same learning capacity as you. You have to have patience in that learning concept. So you provide training, but you also need to invest in the time that it takes that person to learn. Now, next week, we'll look about respect, and we'll talk about, well, what about the individual who just doesn't get it? We'll talk about how you manage that scenario. And that's really about putting a timeline in place and giving that person every opportunity to do it well. Then looking at progression opportunities, not being, you know, not overly getting caught up in the idea of my business doesn't have scale for opportunity. My business doesn't have scale for progression, but thinking imaginatively, like what are they could be lateral skills. They don't have to be, it doesn't have to be a progression through a pyramid style scenario. It's actually saying, well, what other skills would contribute that if I invest in my staff, it'll give them a sense of being invested in, they'll stay with me longer, they'll value what I'm doing for them, and it's also good for my business. And then, you know, allowing people to realize their potential. And one of the ways we do that is by not micromanaging when that person is really, so investing a belief in your staff helps them to realize their potential. So investing your belief in that person allows them to realize potential, and they can flower into something extraordinary. And we could take somebody into a business who has, you know, really failed elsewhere, and you just give them the opportunity to be the best they can be, support, accountability, and they flower into something extraordinary. The caterpillar turns into a butterfly. So anything that's right now looking at you in those investment categories, there is no huge money outlay. And one of the things here on the training and the development aspect is people say, I don't want to invest in my staff, they leave me. Well, you know, I hope they do. I hope they leave, because that's such a sour and negative way to think about your staff. You don't deserve to have staff if you're not willing to invest in them. You need to invest in your staff and believe that they will stay with you. And if they don't, you've got to at least allow them to leave with grace, that they will go away and speak kindly about your business. But if you hold on to them, and you know, somebody said to me once, better to have somebody for 2 years you've invested in than somebody for a lifetime that you haven't. So it's really thinking about, what is your opinion about investment, and do you see your staff as a cost or an asset? And remember, if you see your staff as a cost, you will not invest in them. And believe me, you will have high people turnover. And if you do manage to keep somebody for any length of time, that person is not working to their optimum because you have not invested in them. So just to summarize it all, you have seen this pyramid before. I've brought it into nearly all of my talks so far. Where do we see a lot of this happening? Well, you can certainly account for a lot of that physical aspects before you employ, so those employment basics. Then moving on to the initial employment, that support, you're going to give that really superb first impression by investing time, by communicating effectively, showing that the resources are available. So when somebody comes into your business, they're happy they chose your business over every other business they could have gone into. And then the ongoing employment section is about training, learning, progression, and potential. So again, we can account a huge amount of this investment is controllable at the controllable stage. We put time and personal effort in and support to create that good first impression. And then we continue that just because I have the person here does not mean I stop and I forget to invest in them. It means I am continuously on a journey. I have the discipline to continuously invest and review my staff so that I am getting the best out of them. And that's, you know, that maps directly onto all of the pyramids that we've discussed before. So look, a huge amount of information has gone in there. We've looked at why would somebody be employed in the first place. Have you there, you know, why should they invest their why in you? That's really, really important. Of all the places they should go, why should they pick your business? It's a privilege to have employees. You shouldn't feel that you're giving them the privilege. Ideally, you both feel privileged to work together, and that's a win-win relationship. You're thinking about who you're investing in and why. So that's a really valuable thing to think about. Who is this person? What's their power? What's their interest? If they have a lot of power but low interest, how do I sufficiently interest them to come and work for me? What package do I offer? Who am I allowing to have too much current employees? Who am I giving too much investment to and actually ignoring other people? Think about that. And then very simply, you know, start working through these ideas of physical support, of physical investment, support investment, development investment, and do not panic. Do not think this is a massive money outlay. A lot of this is just your personal time, a bit of imagination about how you could work more effectively, getting the basics right that will, you know, help everybody, not just your current employees, but anybody coming into your business, and it's really building your reputation as an employer of choice. And we're going through that. We're applying it to the model that we've already looked at of employment before you employ somebody, creating that great initial impression, and then ongoing employment, not stopping there. It never stops there. That relationship evolves. You are constantly investing in that relationship to keep it on a win-win scenario. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope there are some questions, and again, a huge amount of information. But as you know, it's being recorded. I will send out a fact sheet, so something that you can continue to reflect on in your own time. Thank you, Bernie.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Nollaig. Everyone is applauding. You can hear their applause. Really well done, and great tangibles there in the categories that you spoke about too, and how to go through that and think about your business and your staff and achieve those tangibles. We do have some questions. I do recall Tom O'Toole, the owner of a bakery over here in Australia, Nollaig. It's a famous chain. He spoke and somebody said to him, what happens if I invest in someone and they leave? And he said, what happens if you don't invest in them and they stay? So certainly
absolutely
a good outlook on making sure you invest in the people to get the most out of them for your business and for themselves. So question, should you pay bonuses for great performance?
Oh, this bonus question. Look, bonusing is it's just dirty. It incentivizes wrong behavior, it incentivizes shortcuts. So if you're going to pay a bonus, it should be after the fact. It's after exceptional performance, because when it's after exceptional performance, that employee has showed initiative, they've showed heart, they've showed willing, and they've really applied themselves. It should be once off or rare, because, you know, we adapt really quickly. Humans adapt really quickly. You know, you're going to find you're finding yourself Melbourne area and in Victoria, you're in your lockdown state, and how quickly that becomes normal. Humans are highly, highly adaptive, and we start to expect things, so we start expecting that bonus. The year you really want to bonus somebody is the year you can't, because that's the year weather has been the worst, that's the year milk price has been the worst. And we start to create the wrong impression in the workplace. Also, if you're known as a business that incentivizes and bonuses, you're actually attracting the wrong type of person first day. You're attracting somebody who's externally motivated to get more money, rather than somebody who's intrinsically motivated to do a good job on behalf of your business. So the only place we see, it's asked all the time about bonusing. The only place that bonusing is standard is in the financial sector, and we all know what happens there. I mean, we go, you know, boom or bust regularly, you know, and we see that cyclical financial investment, and the way it happens is that it ends in recession, because it stimulates ridiculous behavior, high risk behavior that can pay off but can dramatically damage people. So we need to be careful of that bonusing. I think one of the best descriptions I heard was, I was with a group in the UK, and this particular business also had a chicken farm, and in the UK they publish the averages for the industry, and once the averages for the industry are across the whole industry, once the averages are published, you are rewarded if you have been above the average. So it happens after the fact, and it's controllable. Now, the same business says they have tried a number of ways to apply bonusing to dairy, and they say there are too many extraneous variables to make that clean, and they've never found a way to do it. So I think for a dairy farmer, that's a really interesting comment. There are too many variables that affect milk quality and milk production to allow it to be bonusable. But hold people accountable to do their job well. Bonusing often happens because people don't like punishing. or they don't like holding accountable. So instead of holding somebody accountable for milk quality, they incentivize them to get better milk quality. So ask yourself, what are you trying to bonus? And if that's part of the basic contract of what you have an employee that you're already paying them for, why on earth would you be paying them more money? So if they're not doing their job properly, you need to hold them accountable and get them to work for what they're paid for the transactional agreement that is, you do this amount of work for me and I will pay you this amount of money. So exceptional performance, if you're going to bonus for it after the fact, be very clear for yourselves exactly what exceptional behavior, you know, and I talked about this before, understand your tolerances in your business, what's good performance, what's unacceptable, what's good, what's exceptional, and clearly express why that bonus has been given, and clearly express this is not going to happen commonly, you were just really impressed with outstanding behavior.
Thanks, Nollaig. What about when you're trying to get the right person in a job advertisement? What should you include in there? Should you include anything about how you go?
Okay, so you need in the job ads, you know, we write one ad and we put it somewhere, and we're devastated that we don't get the person we want. You have to advertise in multiple places, in multiple ways. So you have to understand, first of all, we want business awareness. Who do I want to fit into my business? So exactly what am I looking for? So when that person comes, I recognize it, okay? So we need to be looking in a number of different places. We need to think about, you know, what are the kind of characteristics you want of somebody. So for example, if you're looking for somebody to milk your cows consistently every day, you're probably going to keep it relatively local because you need them to be in early in the morning. So you're going to look at all the things that could affect that employment. One of the great ones I've heard about was in Cheshire in the UK, a big grazing area for dairy in the UK, saying that he spent years and years putting his ads on Facebook, but all his friends on Facebook were farmers, so they're equally looking for other people, and he got nothing. And then he put it into a local magazine for the local village, and he got 20 calls in one day. So we need to rethink about where we're advertising. You need to reimagine the job. You know, it's a physical job, so you know, why not advertise at the local gym? Why not put it down at the local nursery where you might have somebody, you know, you might have a mother or father who's got a couple of extra hours between when they drop the child off and when they pick the child up and they're looking for extra money. Really just thinking about imagination. And some of you may have heard these stories before, but I use them because they're really useful. I heard some stories and I thought they were urban legend actually, and somebody said, no, I know the person you're talking about, so it's been confirmed. So in an Irish system, a grazing system, they noticed that there were two ladies who this farm had a ring road around it, and they said they noticed these two ladies walking every single day, happened to know the two ladies and said, listen, I see you out walking every day, why don't you come into me on a Saturday morning, walk my farm, measure my grass, and I'll pay you for it. So that's thinking outside the box. That's somebody who spotted an opportunity. The other one was in the same area, so they're very entrepreneurial in this area, obviously, knew somebody who was spending a lot of money on gym membership, bit of a gym bunny. She loved going into the gym, getting a workout, and he said, you're spending money going to the gym. Why don't you come to my farm, milk my cows in the morning? It's a physical workout. You can listen to your music. I'll teach you how to do it properly, and I'll pay you rather than you giving away money. And this person is that farmer's best milker. So it's really about challenging your assumptions about what employment looks like, and putting that ad in multiple places. And by the way, if you've been putting your ad in a place that you're not getting the results from, change where you're putting it. And if you have something that's agricultural specific, where everybody who's reading it knows what a dairy farmer does, you're not going to differentiate yourself from the next ad that's telling everybody what a dairy farmer does. What do you offer that's different? You know, are you near, you know, could they potentially go skiing in winter? Can they join, have you got a particularly prestigious local Aussie Rules club next door to you? What do you have that makes you different? And particularly if you're advertising for somebody who already has experience, they know what a dairy farm does, what are you offering in addition to that? So use your imagination. If what you're doing so far doesn't work, ask, but word of mouth is hugely powerful. Don't be afraid to ask around your peers, your friends, do they know anybody? And you see that a lot in Ireland. You know, I know somebody who works on the construction site. His machine is redundant during the winter. You know, he's a contractor. His machines are redundant during the winter. Get him in to feed your cattle. Those kind of things where you're just using your imagination, really, really valuable. And if you can keep those ideas local, well, then you've basically got somebody for life because they want to stay around.
Thanks, Nollaig. Timescales for progression for outstanding training opportunities.
Oh, cracking question. Timescales really come down to the age of your business, so how well established your business is and what opportunity exists, so the scale of your business, of course, and also the capability of the person around you. So I suppose what we'd always say is who's the best person to do the job. It could often be you because you've been doing it so long. So maybe you know, but that's about being very, very strict in reviewing your own behavior, because you might have a lot of redundant habits. You've always done it that way, so you're continuing to do it that way. So it's understanding what is good progression, and that can vary. So somebody might pick up one task everybody picks up one particular task easily, but the next task isn't as easy to pick up, or you just see a huge variation on people's learning capacity. So progression and timescales come down to the individual and come down to your ability to facilitate, communicate, and train that person. So it depends on what the training capacity is on your farm. That's going to dictate progression. The answer, it's different in every single business, and it's different for every person. And we'll discuss that concept through a model in the next session about how you facilitate somebody to learn. They go from being an enthusiastic beginner to a disillusioned learner to a capable but cautious performer, and ultimately a high achiever. And you have to intervene on that progress to make sure that you're expediting that process. So I'll answer that more fully, but progression really depends on the person's capability and the scale and maturity of the business that you're in. So it really does vary.
Thanks, Nollaig. Another question. I have a current challenge that 2 employees will not engage performance management. There are language barriers due to COVID-19. They have been unable to continue the language training I've organised for them effectively. They have also bluntly told me that they won't do it. They're German, so extremely direct. Do you have any suggestion how to proceed? There are many workplace challenges arising from this, such as loss of confidence in them and other team members.
Okay, I will say, and I know this person who's written this is probably highly frustrated at the moment. I will say, be grateful for the directness, because that is far better than somebody hiding. So, you know, embrace that direct approach. And if that's something you acknowledge, be direct back, because that's what's understood. So we have huge issues with cultural differences in language. One of the things in cultural differences in general, and when we look at business, big difference between American business and German business. The Germans praise by not interfering, and the Americans punish by not praising. Okay, so we've got 2 very cultural different things. So if the Germans feel they're doing well, you don't interfere with them. If you think they're doing well, you don't interfere with them. It's really being imaginative on how you get across this. Now, you're holding accountability. If you have held somebody accountable, if you've got a contract that says you are accountable for this work and they're not doing it, well, that's a sanctionable behavior. You know, that's a sanctionable occurrence, and you have to hold them accountable and say, look, this is what we've agreed to. Now, you can always get some legal. You could always get legal advice or from whoever manages, whoever the employment law body is in Australia. You could just find out what your rights are in terms of somebody not doing their job and how you can hold them accountable. So having that little bit of confidence for yourself. You make a great point about losing confidence in them, that they won't do their job. It sounds a little bit like you've got people who are working to rules, so they feel that they're untouchable a bit, and that may be because you've created that to some extent. So you have to be able to clarify to them that their current behaviour is unacceptable, and you are going to continuously work on this until you get it right. From a communication point of view, it's getting right back to basics. It's using diagrams, it's using pictures, it's using graphs. So if there's a language barrier, everybody understands the picture. You know, working out how can you tell the picture without misinterpreting what's being said, or them misinterpreting what's being said. The language, the distance barrier. I mean, ideally, until you said the distance barrier, I'd have said you put them in a room, you sit in the middle of them, and you facilitate a conversation until somebody agrees to a compromise, until they compromise. And it could be as awkward as that you're literally sitting in a room refusing to leave it until you get through this impasse. Your physical distance at the moment prevents you from doing that. So in the absence of that, you just have to do a lot of heavy monitoring, and you have to decide to yourself how valuable are these people, and are they worth the Are they worth the attitude that they're displaying? And what's the worst that could happen, and what's the cost to you if you had to let them go? And the day you decide that you're in a position you can let them go, you don't feel half as trapped by them, and you're in a much fresher position to be able to talk to them because you don't believe they have the power. So it's back to that power interest grid. If you absolutely need those individuals, then they've shoved you down into the low power, high interest scenario. And that makes it very difficult for you to negotiate because you feel you're in the weakened position. So sit down and see what are your alternatives so that you feel more confident going into that conversation with them. Work out, if at all possible, where is the sticking point? And it's probably, it's something going on. There's maybe there's lack of role clarity, and they both think that they have the right to tell each other what to do, and actually they don't. Or maybe one does and the other doesn't. So I would get right back to clarity and accountability and who's doing what, and redraw that picture for them so they know exactly what they're supposed to do. I apologize, that's a complicated one to think of the answer on the spot to. I'd need to think about that one a bit more. But certainly I would go back to creating as much role clarity as possible and defining who they account to, where the lines of power are, and who should be accountable for what.
Might have answered this next part of it, but they have bluntly told me that they don't wish to answer any performance review questions. So tricky. So it's the same group that we just spoke about, but I think it sounds like it might be, maybe there's a cultural, like you mentioned there, they're not used to being asked. Your thoughts?
It's a funny one. They won't ask. Look, I suppose personally, if I was working as a consultant for the person asking the question, I would say, well, why are you asking performance review questions in the first place? Why aren't you sitting down and having those conversations? And if you want to hold somebody accountable for their performance, you must have objective evidence. So you sit down and you say, you find evidence for what you're discussing, and not answering the performance review questions. Maybe the questions you're asking aren't correct, and maybe they're just the only staff who've been ever willing to tell you as much. But for me, for the people in this who will be listening to this, the scale of your business in terms of people is going to be small. So really a formal review at the end of the year is probably a year too late. It's probably 12 months too late. You're at a scale where you're probably able to see the majority of your staff at least monthly to see how it's going. You should have a good unit manager in place who is reporting back to you regularly, so that actually performance review is ongoing all the time. By all means, you would have a process review, which is how did calving go, how did breeding go, how did how did herd testing go. That would be a process review. And you should have those as formal concepts. But performance review should be that your unit manager is monitoring and watching behaviour continuously. Managing milk quality through your milk reports, managing whatever system that you're using. So that you're constantly intervening, because the risk of reviews is that you don't hold somebody accountable till well beyond the point. And then we've contravened one of the main things of accountability, which is swift and fair. It should happen directly as soon as possible, and it should be fair. But if you bring that evidence out to me 6 weeks down the line, well, that's smacking the dog the next week for dirtying your parlour the week before. So the performance review might be something we discuss a bit further on a separate occasion, maybe.
Great, thanks very much, Nollaig. And that brings us to the close. We do welcome any questions that people might have in the lead up to our sessions that we have.
Absolutely.
So well done. Thanks very much again, Nollaig, for your time. The next session is on respect, as you mentioned, in 2 weeks' time. That'll be the fifth session that we will hold on from management to employer of choice. So I hope everybody's really enjoyed this evening. Thanks very much for your questions and taking the time out to join us here tonight. I'll send out the fact sheet that Nollaig will provide, and also the recording of this session as well. Thanks once again.